Hello everyone and welcome to Sinful Gaming. I hope you're all doing well, I hope you're all staying safe, and most of all, I hope you're all fighting that war against the Grey. Today we have a Start Collecting Warhammer Age of Sigmar 3rd edition video for you, and today we're going to be looking at the Start Collecting box for the Seraphon faction called Start Collecting Skinks. Now to start off with, we're going to look into exactly what comes inside this box, and so let's get cracking into that. For starters, we get one Skink Star Priest. This is a Skink Wizard hero, a nice little level 1 caster that can cast one spell and unbind dispel one spell per turn. He's got a cool ability where he can give out some mortal wound potential to units nearby with his Serpent Staff. There's an ability where he picks a friendly unit near him and they do mortal wounds on their 6s. We then have a unit of Skinks nearby which have a variety of different weapon loadouts, whether it's with bolt spitters, javelins, or close combat weapons, moon clubs, and their shields, and variations of all of that as well. They're a cool little fast moving screen with decent movement for infantry, and in particular subfactions can be quite hardy as well. Next up, we have the Teradon Ripodactyl Rider kit. Now, this is a dual kit here. These are the flying lizard monsters, the Pterodactyls you see at the background. The ones pictured here are the Pterodons. Their main thing is they have a drop rocks ability. So they have a once per game ability where they can fly over and every model in the unit gets to roll a dice that passes over enemy units. On a 4+, they do D3 mortal wounds. So a good once per game ability to drop some mortal wounds on your opponent. The other variation of this kit is called Ripodactyls. Ripodactyls are a very much more combat orientated unit that have this little bloat toad that floats around the battlefield. You effectively place this marker. It's a toad representing a frog that actually eats the Ripodactyl's eggs, so they really don't like this frog. And it goes around, and when the Ripodactyls are near it, they actually get some abilities like rerolls to their hit rolls with their vicious jaws and stuff like that. They also have exploding hits on 6s with their jaws as well, so they can be pretty decent in a fight. You sort of try to plan where you're going with these, put that bloat toad near an objective marker and send in the Ripodactyls and hope you can get a good round of combat off with them. And they're not too bad after that, probably being able to take apart other skirmishing units. Lastly, we have the Stegodon. This is the giant Ankylosaurus model we have pictured in the center here, and so the Stegodon is an absolute tank of a model. He's got a really good save, starting off at a 1+. Yes, that's right, a 1+ save, and then he's also got either two different weapon options. He's got the Solar Engine, which is a cool missile weapon with a high damage value, and then he's got the Ankylosaurus, which deals out some mortal wounds. Now, depending on which variation you're going with will give you certain access to some subfaction abilities. I'd really recommend probably building the Solar Engine to start with in this, and probably the Teradon Riders as well. I think just this is going to be the better combo to start with this box set for you. The Skinks, it doesn't really matter what you're going to do with them. But anyway, now that we've talked a little bit about them, before we look at expanding the army, we're going to look at the army's terrain feature and sort of talk a little bit about that. And so, the Seraphon have a terrain feature known as the Realm Shaper Engine. This giant lizard man temple is an awesome terrain feature, probably one of my favourite ones in the entire game. Now, for starters, there's actually two ways you can build this. You can either build it in this overgrown way you see pictured here, or it actually has a sort of brand new built clean version of the model as well, available in the same kit, literally by just flipping a bunch of the parts around. A really cool design. Now, its ability, so first of all, it's a defensible terrain feature. So we've got 15 models that can be put inside this scenery piece here. So you can defend it with a couple of your models, particularly good for keeping some of your wizards alive. And then it's got a cool ability. So in your hero phase, you pick another terrain feature on the battlefield, and then pretty much based on how far away that terrain feature is from a Realm Shaper Engine, you roll some dice, and you do some mortal wounds to units near that terrain feature. A cool little bit of extra mortal wounds. You're starting to see mortal wounds pop up a lot in the army. We've already talked about some of the other things as well. And we're going to talk about some more mortal wounds soon. And so, where do we go to next for our Seraphon? Well, for starters, I think continuing on with the skink theme, let's look at some of the monsters we have available. So for starters, the other main monster that has skinks on top of it is the Stegodon. This giant carnivorous triceratops monster is absolutely amazing. Has a few different variations of builds, has a character variation we'll talk about in a second, and also it's got the Engine of the Gods and its own monster version here. What's cool about the Stegodon in particular sub-factions, it can even become Battleline, the basic crew model you see here, which is awesome. We've then got Chameleon Skinks, which are a different variation of skink. These are much more stealthy, as you would expect by them being Chameleon Skinks. They have a bunch of rules that just make them a little bit better at sort of redeploying and ambush tactics on the battlefield than your regular skinks. Next up, Skink Characters, and I think this is where it gets interesting. So for starters, we've obviously already talked about the Skink Star Priest, and then we've got the Skink Priest alongside him. The Skink Priest is a little bit different in that he is a priest rather than a wizard, so he's got prayers that he can take advantage of thanks to that priest keyword, so things like curse and heal are really great on him. And then we've got the Skink Stars here as well, which is sort of like a mini sort of sled. It's like the highest rank of skink we've got in the army. So the Skink Stars here, so he's got Cosmic Herald, much like a couple of the other skink characters. They can generate some command points for you, and he's got the ability to pick some friendly Seraphon units and attempt to give them extra charge range. He's also got some cool spells. He, once again, is a one cast, and he's got his Control Fate spell, where you can pick if a unit within 18 inches of the caster, if it's an enemy unit, they subtract one from save rolls, and if it's a friendly unit, they add one to their save rolls. So some really nice abilities there. Lastly, we have the Skink Oracle on Teradon, another monster character mashup of skinks, and then we've got and so he can have some cool abilities. He's sort of like our best sort of wizard caster. He's once again only a 1-on-1, but he's also got the ability of being a monster on top, and he's got the Oracle, the Slan rule, where he adds one to casting, dispelling, and unbinding rolls for himself naturally as well. You then got the Teradon and Ripodactyl box, also provides you with the models to build a skink chief on either one of the mounts. This has its own issues though, as you'll need to have an extra spare skink chief or Teradon model or Ripodactyl available to keep your unit at the proper size. Lastly though, Slans. Slans are your best casters in the army and sort of really a major focal point for the lore of the whole Seraphon race. Slans have great magic. They've got Arcane Vassal, where they can use the skink models around the table to sort of cast their spells through. They generate some extra command points. They add one to their casting, dispelling, and unbinding. And they've got some great spells on their war scroll as well. Not to mention, you've got the named character Lord Croak, who is an absolute beast of a caster. There's so many cool abilities he can make use of. Just a fantastic model. Now, let's go talk a little bit about what we've all talked about here, put it all together and have a look at a little sample army list we've put together using everything we've talked about in the video. And so here we have our little sample army list for a Seraphon army built using the Star Collecting Skinks as a basis. So we've decided to go with coalesced Thunder Lizards and build our army based around the single Battleline that we get in the faction. So for starters, obviously Thunder Lizards, what exactly does this give us? So it gives us an extra 2 wounds on all our Seraphon monsters, meaning that Battleline is going to be sticking around even longer with those extra wounds. He's already hard to put down, and so extra wounds on him is just awesome. And it gives us a cool command ability where our heroes can elect to make our Solar Engine Battledons or Stegodons with the Engine of the Gods double down and do their thing again. So we're going to have a double shooting Battledon with Solar Engine, and that's generally the thing we're using this whole sub-faction to build up here. So our Skink Star Priest, he's going to be our general. He's going to have the Master of the Star Rituals, which gives him +1 to cast. Nice. And he's got to take the generic artifact Fusel of Conflagration. Now, normally this subfaction has a generic command trait that you must take called Prime War Beast, but if you're not a mounted general, you do not have to take this. So we're only having to take the artifact Fusel of Conflagration, which is a cool little additional mortal wound output. Now, spell, he's gone for Hand of Glory. This is rerolls to hit. Rerolls to hit are just amazing in the game now, and so this is just a really good spell. Help get the most out of those skinks and other units in your army. For Battleline, we've gone with 3 units of 10 skinks. Now, you can easily build this army up that we've got here on the picture with the Star Collecting box and an extra box of skinks. Really, really cheap way to get into the army. And so 3 units of 10 skinks, build them up with whatever sort of weapon loadouts you want and go for town. I'd suggest having a good mix of shooting. I probably wouldn't recommend the full-on combat variations. I think using these units as little sort of speed bumps around the way, doing some shooting, putting your Serpent Staff and giving them the mortal wound output with their shooting is probably the best way to go. We then got 3 Teradon Riders. Once again, this is just more mortal wound output for our army, and they're just going to be around, probably hitting a decent target to make sure they get the most out of those the 3d3s on the 4-ups that they're going to have for the mortal wounds. And then Battleline with the solar engine. This is going to come in at about 45 points spare in the army, so we're very likely going to get a triumph with this army, and you're probably going to want to get the +1 to wound. I think that'll get the most out of this army for you. Put it on something like the Battleline, either in combat or with shooting, and just get more out of him. Lastly, grand strategy wise, you've got a decent amount of units with good movement. I do think that maybe your grand strategy would be pretty good if you went with something like the Dominion, so you can control the most terrain on the battlefield, though your Battleline is really hard to put down, so you could even go Beastmaster, because just banking on that Battleline not dying at 750 points is a pretty good strategy. Anyway, I'd love to know if you've picked up Start Collecting Skinks, how you're going with your Seraphon army, what are you thinking of doing with it? If you're looking to get into Seraphon, ask away your questions and let us know in the comments below what you think of this particular list and how you would change it up with all the things you started with Seraphon and learnt for yourself. Well, thank you for watching the video. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to turn those bell notifications on so you don't miss a thing when we upload on the channel. Now, next up, you can also come and chat more with us on our Discord server, which we've got a link to in the description of the video, and we've also got links there as well to our merch store on Teespring. Lastly, we'd like to give a shout out to everyone who helps support the channel via Patreon and YouTube members and in other ways. Thank you to our Patreon members: Christian Weir, James Soren, Chaos Spawn, AJC, Kenny Lyle, Outer and Shop First, James Crowder, Andrew Bowen, Nathan Fee, Tim Newman, The Rising Ape, Cure Dynamic, Agu, Anthony B, MJ, and Dynet226. And thank you to our YouTube members: Green Roots Gaming, Kenton Young, Steve T, The Real Zeop, Chris Wallace, TrueRyer12, Vinny, Lock Lorick, Matt Mollum, and Becca Kinska Groupie. A special thank you as well to Lady Witchfox Art, who does all the amazing art for the channel, and to Xmorphic, who does a fantastic job at helping moderate our Discord server and keep everything nice and working there. If you'd like to help support the channel in a way like we've just seen, you can do so by finding the links to both Patreon and YouTube members in the description of the video. Thank you all for watching again though. Stay safe everyone, stay well, and most of all, keep fighting that war against Grey. Ciao for now.